40% of Canadian jobs today could be automated in the next 10 years, literally automated, right? That's an incredible number and an incredible speed. And the question is, are our institutions ready to be able to deal with that disruption?
A lot of Americans right now are worried about how we're going to compete with China. I'm more worried about how we're going to compete with robots. If you look from 2000 to 2010, for every job that was lost to trade, there were 6 jobs lost because of automation. The thing we need to realize about automation is it's all types of industries. Some have gotten a lot of attention. The reality is there are so many more areas, so many more industries that it's not really a question of which industries will be affected and which ones won't. It's really a question of which jobs within each industry will be affected. What concerns me right now is that we are probably at the dawn of a new machine age, and yet we haven't really prepared for it in terms of our policies.
What we have to do is to make sure that folks are trained for the jobs that are coming in now, because some of those jobs of the past are just not going to come back. But frankly, part of it's had to do with automation. You go into an auto factory today that used to have 10,000 people, and now they've got 1,000 people making the same number of cars or more.
Joe Scherndorf is on the board of the World Economic Forum in Davos. The revolution, he says, will not just render millions of jobs redundant, but also a lot of multinational corporations.
We tend to talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0, and the simple thing people say is, well, robots are going to replace factory workers' jobs. And I think to the most part that's true. But the biggest issue is going to be computers have now gotten to the point where they're so intelligent that they will be able to do a series of jobs, what we call white-collar work today. What's required is a totally different education set. That's why I have a little bit of challenge with, quote, industrial revolution. It's really an economic revolution 4.0.
Any technology that makes things better, faster, or cheaper will eventually become standard. It's inevitable. If you've paid any attention to the news, then you've no doubt seen reports of automation and AI, the doomsday theories that we're all going to be out of jobs, all sitting on the street, nothing to do. And I always thought, like, yeah, but that doesn't apply to 3D, because like what we're doing is art. And then you see an algorithm that'll take the styles from famous paintings in history and apply it to a photo. And so I wondered, like, what are we looking at here? Like, it kind of made me wonder if this is, you know, the old days of the Disney 2D animators being replaced by the 3D animators. So Raf Costa plotted some games from 1985 to today, and he found a disturbing trend that every 10 years, the cost of games go up 10 times. A big portion of this cost is assets. Assets are unreasonably expensive. So let's say, for example, you're making a video game that involves a street. You've got to have characters running down a street for whatever reason. So you've got to model a building, okay? And it's a pretty detailed apartment, so you work pretty hard. You might be able to get it done in 12 hours, okay? Then you've got to texture it. Texturing often takes just as long as the modeling, but let's say you get it done in 10. And then halfway through the work week, you've got it done in 22 hours. But at a cost of $60 per hour, the average wage, this building ends up being about $3,900. So when you look at a game like The Division, put price tags on everything. And it's very easy to see why games are costing hundreds of millions of dollars. And then basically you let the software self-generate. And this is how you bring those costs down. Underneath the trees, there would be ecosystems of like smaller plants that would grow in the shadows. If it was near a lake, there was going to be different plants there. It would automatically update according to the altitude. So if it's higher up, there would be smaller trees. A machine learning denoiser will do it really, really well. Not only every renderer will need to use their denoiser, but also every camera manufacturer. Another thing is up-resing. So you've got a small image, small little JPEG you find, and you're like, but I need it to be double that size. This is up-resing. Like, I want this style from Claude Monet, whatever. And then you put an input in. This is my photo I took on my holiday, and then it spits it out, which is just crazy. And what's most crazy of all is that it actually fooled 39% of art historians into thinking that they were looking at something that was actually painted, not computer generated. I couldn't think of anyone more wanting the machine to fail than an art historian, but it worked.
Automation used to mean big, stupid machines doing repetitive work in factories. Today, they can land aircraft, diagnose cancer, and trade stocks. We are entering a new age of automation unlike anything that's come before. According to a 2013 study, almost half of all jobs in the US could potentially be automated in the next 2 decades. Things used to be simple. Innovation made human work easier and productivity rose, which means that more stuff or services could be produced per hour using the same amount of human workers. This eliminated many jobs, but also created other jobs that were better, which was important because the growing population needed work. So, in a nutshell, innovation, higher productivity, fewer old jobs, and many new and often better jobs. Overall, this worked well for a majority of people and living standards improved. There's a clear progression in terms of what humans did for a living. For the longest time, we worked in agriculture. With the Industrial Revolution, this shifted to production jobs. And as automation became more widespread, humans shifted into service jobs. And then, only a few moments ago in human history, the information age happened. Suddenly, the rules were different. Our jobs are now being taken over by machines much faster than they were in the past. While new information age industries are booming, they are creating fewer and fewer new jobs. In 1979, General Motors employed more than 800,000 workers and made about $11 billion US. In 2012, Google made about $14 billion US while employing 58,000 people. You may not like this comparison, but Google is an example of what created new jobs in the past. Innovative new industries. Old innovative industries are running out of steam. Just look at cars. When they became a thing 100 years ago, they created huge industries. Cars transformed our way of life, our infrastructure, and our cities. Millions of people found jobs either directly or indirectly. Decades of investment kept this momentum going. Some technologists argue that the internet is an innovation on a par with the introduction of electricity. If we go with this comparison, we see how our modern innovation differs from the old one. The internet created new industries, but they're not creating enough jobs to keep up with population growth or to compensate for the industries the internet is killing. At its peak in 2004, Blockbuster had 84,000 employees and made $6 billion US in revenue. In 2016, Netflix had 4,500 employees and made $9 billion in revenue. Or take us, for example. With a full-time team of just 12 people, Kurzgesagt reaches millions of people. A TV station with the same amount of viewers needs way more employees. While even our smartest machines are bad at doing complicated jobs, they are extremely good at doing narrowly defined and predictable tasks. This is what destroyed factory jobs. But look at a complex job long and hard enough, and you'll find that it's really just many narrowly defined and predictable tasks, one after another. Machines are on the brink of becoming so good at breaking down complex jobs into many predictable ones that for a lot of people, there will be no further room to specialize. We are on the verge of being out-competed. Show a machine all the things you bought online, and it will slowly learn what to recommend to you, so you buy more things. Machine learning is now meeting more of its potential because in recent years, humans have started to gather data about everything. Behavior, weather patterns, medical records, communication systems, travel data, and of course, data about what we do at work. What we've created by accident is a huge library machines can use to learn how humans do things and learn to do them better. These digital machines might be the biggest job killer of all. They can be replicated instantly and for free. When they improve, you don't need to invest in big metal things, you can just use the new code. And they have the ability to get better fast. How fast? If your work involves complex work on a computer today, you might be out of work even sooner than the people who still have jobs in factories. There are actual real-world examples of how this transition might be happening. A San Francisco company offers a project management software for big corporations which is supposed to eliminate middle management positions. When it's hired for a new project, the software first decides which jobs can be automated and precisely where it needs actual professional humans. It then helps assemble a team of freelancers over the internet. The software then distributes tasks to the humans and controls the quality of the work, tracking individual performance until the project is complete. Okay, this doesn't sound too bad. While this machine is killing one job, it creates jobs for freelancers, right? Well, as the freelancers complete their tasks, learning algorithms track them and gather data about their work and which tasks it consists of. So what's actually happening is that the freelancers are teaching a machine how to replace them. On average, this software reduces costs by about 50% in the first year and by another 25% in the second year. And the first decade of the 21st century was the first one where the total amount of jobs in the US did not grow for the first time. In a country that needs to create up to 150,000 new jobs per month just to keep up with population growth, this is bad news. This is also starting to affect standards of living. In the past, it was seen as obvious that with rising productivity, more and better jobs would be created. But the numbers tell a different story. In 1998, US workers worked a total of 194 billion hours. Over the course of the next 15 years, their output increased by 42%. But in 2013, the amount of hours worked by US workers was still 194 billion hours. What this means is that despite productivity growing drastically, thousands of new businesses opening up, and the US population growing by over 40 million, there was no growth at all in the number of hours worked in 15 years. At the same time, wages for new university graduates in the US have been declining for the past decade, while up to 40% of new graduates are forced to take on jobs that don't require a degree. Our economies are based on the premise that people consume. But if fewer and fewer people have decent work, who will be doing all the consuming? Are we producing ever more cheaply only to arrive at a point where too few people can actually buy all our stuff and services? Or will the future see a tiny minority of the super rich who own the machines dominating the rest of us? What if the state covered your cost of living? Would you still go to work? Go back to school? Not work at all? What would you do? This concept is called a Universal Basic Income, or UBI, and it's nothing less than the most ambitious social policy of our times. In 2017, basic income is gaining momentum around the world. First trials are ongoing or on their way, and a growing number of countries are considering UBI as an alternative to welfare. Unemployment programs often come with a lot of strings attached, like taking part in courses, applying to a certain number of jobs a month, or accepting any kind of job offer, no matter if it's a good fit or what it pays. Besides the loss of personal freedom, these conditions are often a huge waste of time and only serve to make the unemployment statistics seem less bad. Often your time would be much better spent looking for the right job, continuing education, or starting a business. Another unwanted side effect of many welfare programs is that they trap people in poverty and promote passive behavior. Imagine a benefit of $1,000 each month. In a lot of programs, if you earn a single dollar extra, the whole thing is taken away. If you take a job that's paying $1,200, you might not only lose your benefits, but because of your taxes and other costs like transportation, you might end up having less money than before. So if you actively try to better your situation and your total income is not improving or even shrinking, welfare can create a ceiling that traps people in poverty and rewards passive behavior. A basic income can never be cut, and therefore getting a job and additional income will always make your financial situation better. Work is always rewarded. Instead of a ceiling, it creates a floor from which people can lift themselves up. In 2016, only 33% of US employees were engaged at work, 16% were actively miserable, and the remaining 51% were only physically present. Would 67% of people stop working if they could? It would be unfair to portray work as just a chore. Work gives us something to do. It challenges us. It motivates us to improve. We work for social status, wealth, and our place in the world. And for many people, work gives them meaning.